After the most beautifully observed minute's silence in memory of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, the Royal Park here in Monza now roars into life. Welcome along to the 73rd World Championship Italian Grand Prix at a racetrack that has staged more F1 Grand Prix and races than any other on the Formula One calendar. It's the Autodromo Internazionale Monza, 3.6 miles long, and where 17 of the fastest 18 races in F1 history have been held, where you take your lap distance at full throttle for 83% of the lap, where there are only 11 corners, 4 to the left and 7 to the right, and a maximum speed of over 200 miles an hour. This is last year's race. Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, the two championship contenders, colliding at the first chicane and both taking themselves out of the race. We move on to the Curva Grande. Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc going wheel to wheel around this famous corner at over 150 miles an hour. Norris ahead of Leclerc. Can he do that from third on the grid today? And back to 2021, this is Lewis Hamilton into turn 4, the Rogier chicane on Lando Norris, and getting that overtaking move right. But you've got to be very, very careful, and the gravel trap is waiting for you. 3 tyre compounds for this race, which should be a one-stop race. The hard is the C2, good enough for 45 laps of hard racing, say Pirelli. The medium is the C3, and the soft is the C4. Expect most to be using the soft at some stage. And here's the grid then, which has been altered quite substantially since qualifying finished due to the amounts of grid penalty places for those taking new engine parts. Yuki Tsunoda and Lewis Hamilton amongst them. Hamilton 3 podiums and 8 starts from that far back. Carlos Sainz got his maiden podium from 20th on the grid in Brazil 2019. He lines up alongside Mick Schumacher, and Schumacher's teammate Kevin Magnussen 1 place ahead with Valtteri Bottas alongside him. Esteban Ocon and Sergio Perez line up side by side. And ahead of those, Lance Stroll, the lowest driver without a penalty from qualifying yesterday. Sebastian Vettel, his teammate alongside him. Nicholas Latifi in the top 10 for only the 3rd time in his career. Starts alongside Zhou Guanyu, equaling his best ever start. It's an all-Dutch, all-world champion, 4th row. Nick de Vries, the Formula E champion, alongside the F1 champion Max Verstappen. Fernando Alonso starts 6th in his 349th Grand Prix alongside Pierre Gasly. And then it's the 2 McLarens. Lando Norris 3rd, last year's race winner Daniel Ricciardo starts in 4th, his best start since Monza last year. And the front row, George Russell, a 2nd top 3 start for him this season, and a pole position for the 8th time this year for Charles Leclerc. And we're looking now from the back of the grid, where there are many out of place trying to make their way through the field, and now to the front, where we have 5 lights on. It's lights out and away we go. Norris has lost places. Into the first corner we go. Charles Leclerc ahead of George Russell, who gets pinched and has to go over the rumble strips. Comes back on behind the Ferrari. And there is Max Verstappen up into 4th place. He started 7th. He's already side by side with Daniel Ricciardo, late on the brakes into that chicane. Max Verstappen is up into the podium places. Let's look at that starts. And the starts, well, it was a very poor getaway from Lando Norris. George Russell, I think, got a better start ahead of Charles Leclerc.
He did, but Leclerc then with a nice, clear picture of the braking zone. Didn't lock any tyres up, and got his elbows out against George Russell.
The Parabolica not easy to follow close to the car in front, even with the changes in downforce and turbulent air this season. 35 metres it was. Verstappen is gaining. It's down to under 20 metres. It's down now to absolute level pegging. There goes Carlos Sainz on the Aston Martin of Sebastian Vettel. Further ahead, there's a bit of a DRS train. There's one Aston Martin before the Parabolica, and there's one Aston Martin before the chicane. Things can get overheated here. So there's lots of straights to cool the brakes down, but is there enough cooling? The carriage towards the rear is Carlos Sainz, and Sainz has got a bit more straight line speed than some, and as you can see, he is quickly closing down Fernando Alonso, and this is going to get a big round of applause from the Tifosi here, because Carlos Sainz is putting on something of a wonder show for Ferrari fans this afternoon. Vettel, who has found a gap but in the arm coat to stop his car by, he is out of this race, and there's an Aston Martin stranded by the track.
Stop the car, please, when it's safe. Stop the car when it's safe.
Sainz, meanwhile, puts his Ferrari into the top 5, and there's a virtual safety car. George Russell is making his way down the main straight.
Now he's going to have to babysit those a little bit to the end of the Grand Prix. Sainz comes through on Ricciardo.
And you can hear how much the fans are loving Carlos Sainz's action this afternoon. 4th place now for Carlos Sainz.
George Russell will be interesting now, because I don't see anybody out there really going that fast on the hard compound tyre, and it's mediums that have gone on to who was the leader, Max Verstappen.
Now he's gaining. Is he going to go for it down the inside? Lewis Hamilton is, and before they apply the brakes into that first chicane, Lewis Hamilton is ahead and up into 6th place. In for the soft tyres, he comes back out onto the track. Max Verstappen leads once again. This is really, really tight. Gasly goes through. Lewis Hamilton on the scene says, thank you very much. I've got new soft tyres. I've got a lot more grip. I'll get past Lando Norris and Pierre Gasly. Daniel Ricciardo under pressure from Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton up into 6th. Norris has got ahead of Pierre Gasly. Leclerc's finally switched on those soft compound tyres, and there goes Lando Norris past his teammate Daniel Ricciardo and up into 7th place. And the Haas hasn't quite got the speed there down the straights to try and get past the Williams, but under braking, Schumacher locks up, trying to force his way through.
And but immediately gets repassed.
And this battle is going to continue on. Latifi got ahead and into the Lesmos. I think Schumacher just gives it a little wiggle of the rear, and during that wiggle forces the Haas past Nicholas Latifi. Daniel Ricciardo got a problem? Yes, he has.
I've lost the engine.
I think Lewis Hamilton retired at that very point. Now we are going to get a safety car place.
Will they red flag it, do you think, and have a standing start finish for the last 3 laps?
Well, it's an option, but they tend to normally just red flag if there has been a crash and there's debris on the track and there's barrier repairments that are made. You could argue, would it be, in a sporting context, slightly unfair to red flag this now?
We will finish the race behind the safety car.
Come on. It's clear, come on.
Yeah, copy.
It's a 5th consecutive win for Max Verstappen. Behind the safety car, he wins the Italian Grand Prix. He will stand on the podium at Monza for the first time in his Formula One career. There are boos ringing around for Max Verstappen, but he's won a race at Ferrari's home track. He's not a Ferrari driver, and Ferrari weren't given the opportunity with the race. Finished behind the safety car. It perhaps was an unsatisfactory ending for many, as we like to see action all the way to the checkered flag, but Red Bull and Max Verstappen won't mind that at all. It's another win on their seemingly unstoppable march to a world title or 2 in 2022. Max Verstappen wins the Italian Grand Prix.
Great Sunday for us. I think all weekend we've worked to have the best race car possible, and I think it paid off today because we were good on the tires. I think straight away, of course, after my clean lap 1, we were really in the race, and I could see we had more pace than Ferrari, and that was of course the most important for us. And then they opted to do a little bit of a different strategy, and that really paid off for us.
Not happy. I mean, I think the pace was strong today. Max was also really strong, but as we expected, to be honest. And then we stopped on that first virtual safety car, which unfortunately ended when we were in the pits. So we lost half of probably the gain that we normally have stopping in the virtual safety car. And from that moment onwards, we knew the race would be very difficult.
Yeah, it was a pretty long, lonely race. Pace wasn't good. It wasn't the most enjoyable one for sure. But as I said on the radio, we're scoring these podiums when the car's fast. We're scoring them when the car isn't fast, and we've got to be satisfied with that at least.
Yeah, basically my front right disc was on fire, so we boxed and then we spent a few laps with the front right disc on fire, and had to bring it back down. So when I was on the hard, I had to massively manage the brakes to make sure that I could bring them back on.
It was amazing. It was amazing. The whole experience from yesterday till now has just been a dream, kind of jumping on a car on a driver's parade and seeing all the excitement for Formula One and getting the opportunity to race, starting in top 10 and, you know, executing a good race, scoring points in debut, being kind of announced, or how do you call it, called driver of the day. It's just been amazing.